Hello, welcome once again to Lato's Law. I'm Steve Lato. Mike in Florida sent me a note and said, "Hey Steve, is there really a law in Michigan that says you can't have a bumper or tow hitch on your car unless you're actually towing something? Is that really the truth in Michigan? That's a really crazy law if it is." And I said, "No, there's no such law like that in Michigan." And he said, "Well, check this out." And he sent me the link that he saw on Facebook. And he passed along a Facebook link that many people are passing around as they do on the internet. And it says that there is, in fact, a law in Michigan that says you cannot have a tow hitch or a bumper hitch on your car unless you're actually towing something at the time. So when you unhook your trailer or whatever it is you're towing, you have to actually take your bumper hitch off. And that's what this link says. And I said, no, that's insanity. So I went and looked it up. And of course, there is no such law. Thank you, Mike, for passing this along. But this is something we need to be aware of. It's a bigger problem. You need to talk to those people in your life who are not that savvy about the internet. Explain to them how this works. If I handed you a 5 or 10-year-old newspaper and said, look what happened, the first thing you do is you look at the date in the newspaper and go, hey, this is old news. It happened 5 years ago. But when somebody sends you a link on the internet and says, check this out, most people glance at the headline and then look at the video to see if the dancing cat or the donkey doing gymnastics is interesting. They don't notice how old it is. And once in a while, you go, oh, wow, that was actually filmed 8 years ago? They had digital video cameras back then? And so you have to tell people to look at the dates on things. But what's crazier about this is that when this was written 6 years ago, it wasn't true. So what's being passed around is an article that appeared in the Huron Daily Tribune. And the Huron Daily Tribune is published in Michigan, up in the thumb in a little place called Bad Axe, Michigan, where I lived for a couple years. It's a long story. I've told it before. But the Huron Daily Tribune has a weekly columnist named Captain Fred Davis. And he wrote a column called As I See It. He might still write it, I don't know. But the law says to ditch your hitch. The law says ditch your hitch. Now here's the thing. This was published in 2013. So this is 6 years old. And people are passing around, oh my gosh, there's this law, there's this law. But the funny thing is that this wasn't true when the guy wrote it. So the guy has some of his story wrong, but we'll get to that. Let me read to you the wise words of Captain Fred. Last week I noted some laws are humorous, such as those that relate to our privacy. There are also many laws that are simply ridiculous. Recently I discovered that new laws can be put on the books without notifying those that may be affected. A few months ago, I renewed my driver's license and my license plates. I was told of changes and paid extra charges, yet I received no notice of a traffic law change that has been enacted. Many readers of this column may be surprised to learn that there is a new law for vehicles. There is a new law for vehicles that have a tow hitch. The law was introduced by Representative George T. Darany of Michigan's 15th District in Dearborn. I provide this information to readers so you may be aware that the Darany bill, HB 5610, to prohibit a trailer hitch or receiver to protrude from the back of a vehicle unless the vehicle, car, or pickup is towing a trailer. Unquote. If you think this law is hard to believe, look it up. Michigan House Bill 5610, and read the comments from happy Michiganders, the majority of which are strongly against it. Why weren't they asked their opinion? Whatever happened to elected to represent the people? Well, if they're stating their comments, isn't that what they're doing? They're giving their opinion? And aren't they giving their opinion on a website where they're asked to give their opinion? But here's the thing. As you read the comments, you learn the bill is thought by many to be a ridiculous ban and proof that many of our elected officials have too much extra time on their hands. I wonder if Darany is the person that hit his leg on my hitch in the parking lot. If so, I wonder why he was looking in my vehicle instead of where he was going. Dude, do you really think a guy from Dearborn who's a legislator in Lansing actually was walking around in downtown Bad Axe and hit his leg on your truck? Or are you trying to be funny? Because if you're trying to be funny, you are failing miserably. I can offer another personal example regarding hitches. One day, while sitting at a friend's place of business, I looked out the window and noticed my parked vehicle was moving. When I went out to check, I found an elderly driver at the wheel of his car attempting to push my vehicle. He was in a tight parking spot and was having trouble pulling out. I had my hitch on, so I avoided major damage to my SUV. The man's minivan was not so fortunate. Since Darany represents Dearborn, he puts that in quotes for some odd reason, he should consider asking one of the many auto wizards about inventing a new electronic device for cars. The device would prohibit a cell phone from operating in a vehicle while it is underway. the device would save a lot more money than a ban on trailer hitches. Who said a ban on trailer hitches would save money? Like, do bills and laws have to actually save money? What? Huh? Yesterday, I could have lost my life. I was crossing the street and had to literally jump out of the way of a pickup truck. The driver was smoking, talking on a cell phone, and running the stop sign while making a turn. No, I didn't yell at the person, only because the first words that came to mind could not be shouted out in public. The idea is just waiting to be developed and hopefully already in the works, considering the massive electronics being built into our new vehicles. My 2008 Jeep has a built-in GPS which does not allow changes in programmed information while the car is moving. If a cell phone deactivation device were installed in vehicles, we wouldn't have to worry about the driver behind us hitting our hitches while they're looking at their laps texting. And laps, he has possessive, LAP''S, texting. And so Captain Fred Davis, in case you're curious, is a retired charter captain and nationally published author of boating articles. As I See It columns appear Saturday in the Huron Daily Tribune, and his Boat Smart articles are published online. But of course, Captain Fred is a lunatic, because this is not a law, and it never was a law, despite the fact he said a traffic law change that had been enacted, past tense, and there is a new law for vehicles. And then he says, if you don't believe me, look it up, House Bill 5610. House Bill 5610. Well, I might be the only person to look this up, but no such law was ever passed. A law was proposed for some odd reason. House Bill 5610 was proposed in the year 2012 in the Common Era, and it was sponsored by George Derany, and it addressed vehicles, equipment, removal of certain towing devices from a vehicle when not in use. And now here's the thing. You can go to the Michigan Legislature website if you're tech savvy. And again, if you don't know how the internet works, that might be part of the problem. But you can go to the internet and take a look at any bill in the state legislature in Michigan and see where it is. Was it how it was proposed, how it reads, was it amended, was it sent to a committee, whatever. And so the first thing you notice is it says that the first document here is the House introduced bill. And it goes, introduced bills appear as they were introduced and reflect no subsequent amendments or changes. And then you notice immediately that the next thing that says, as passed by the House is dark, and as passed by the Senate is dark. And then there's dates down below, and it refers to the journal actions. That is, somebody is actually keeping track of when things happen with bills. I will refer you to Schoolhouse Rock, bill up on Capitol Hill. The way it happens in the state legislature in Lansing is very similar to how it happens in Washington, D.C. Someone proposes a bill, goes to committee in a particular house, eventually goes to a vote in the House. If it passes there, it gets sent to the other house, could go to a committee. Eventually, that house could pass it. If they pass it, it goes for the executive for signature, or it could go back to the other house if there are revisions made. They may have to have a committee conference. Then once they've decided on one, that they can then pass both houses in the same language, then sent the executive. The executive could veto it. The executive could sign it. The executive could pocket veto it. And then if it gets vetoed, it then gets sent back to the houses who can then decide if they're going to try to override the veto. It's exactly the same process in Lansing as it is in Washington, D.C., at least substantively. So, introduced by Representative George Derany, the House introduced bill was introduced on May 9th of 2012. On May 9th, 2012, it was read a first time. That is actually an official designation. You read the bill. The bill gets read into the record, and they count. It gets read a first time. That was the first time the bill was read. Also referred to as when the House introduced the bill. On May 9th, after being read a first time and being introduced by Representative George Derany of Dearborn, it was referred to the Committee on Transportation. That was on May 9th also. On May 10th, 2012, it was printed and filed. That is the last register of the bill in the journal action of the House. And again, if you look at the entries, you'll notice that the House introduced bill is lit As passed is dark, as passed by the Senate is dark. Nothing ever happened with this bill. This bill, some guy thought it up for whatever reason. He brought it to the legislature and said, I want to introduce this bill. They said, knock yourself out. He introduced it. They read it into the record. They sent it to a committee where it promptly died. It died. So it was a potential bill. It was a thought of bill. It was a fantasy bill. It was a bill that somebody hoped would get passed. It was a bill that, as far as we know, only had one person who supported it. And that was the guy who introduced it. What was he thinking? I don't know. Why did he introduce it? I don't know. Does it matter? On some level, it matters that there's a representative who introduced a bill that sounds kind of stupid, but it died. Bills get introduced all the time that die. Okay? Stupid bills don't make it out of the committee. They don't make it out for a vote. If they do make it out for a vote, they often get shot down. You don't need to worry about a bill that got shot down literally the day after it was introduced. This bill appears to have survived about 24 hours. So again, the best evidence I can point to is the Journal Register of Actions from the House in Lansing. The bill got introduced on May 9th. It was it was referred to a committee and printed on May 10th, and it died. And it died in 2012. Okay? So in 2012, this bill died. And then for some odd reason, Captain Fred wrote an article about it a year later and said, this law got passed and no one told me. Captain Fred, we only wake you up for the meetings that we think matter to you. Otherwise, we let you sleep through them. But go back to your columns and write what you want. But stop saying that bills have been passed that haven't been. Stop saying that laws exist that don't. No, there is no law that says you cannot have a bumper hitch or trailer hitch on your vehicle unless you're actually towing something. That would be a stupid law. And no, there is no such law right now. So hope you weren't too scared by that. But again, next time somebody sends you anything and says, hey, look at this crazy thing, look to see who wrote it and look to see when it was written. And the second one is often very telling. I've had people send me stuff from reputable sources. They go, look what just happened. And I look at the date and it happened 8 years ago. And I said, yeah, it happened 8 years ago. And they go, oh, well, it's still kind of crazy. Yeah, it was when it happened 8 years ago. There you go. So no such law. Questions or comments, put them below. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.